So this week I watched day 6 of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation trial, and it was super interesting to me to see how Depp was explaining his childhood. I started taking note, okay, this and that, and I was taking note of red flags and of things that made sense. Please know that I'm not diagnosing anybody. This is the information that we are all watching, but since I have a channel about narcissistic abuse, I felt that this would be very interesting because this is a real case, and to see that this happens. I'm just trying to be as objective as I can and help you, recognize the red flags there. It's very interesting for victims of narcissistic abuse to see themselves maybe reflected on this trial. Some of you have been, through a situation sort of like DARVO, deny, abuse, reverse victim offender. Many of you have lived through violence growing up, so it's interesting. His mom was violent, and so he learned early on to escape, flee the situation, go into another room so that he wouldn't be hit, basically. And so the first thing that comes to my mind is repetition compulsion, right? When we relive our childhood experiences through our current partner. His mom was a person that was violent, then it's no surprise that they can end up with a woman that is violent too. This is the inner child replaying, right? It's the inner child that needs to come to terms with that, and it's trying basically to earn love from a person that will never give love, right? And so this is called repetition compulsion. One other thing is when he talks about the tattoos, Amber Heard wanted him to get a tattoo, and he says she was very encouraging in me getting a tattoo of her name. I waited a while, and then, yes, I did it. I got a full tattoo of her. And then he says, like, on the side, and then they start talking about something else. But this is very key for victims of narcissistic abuse. He says, ironically, it wasn't long after that everything started going south. Yeah, so once they get from you what they want, like they're asking you, they want you to move to another country, they want to marry you, and so they get you to do what you don't want to do for them. That's the moment you do that, that's when devaluation starts, right? Ironically. And this happens because they have this borderline base of a personality where narcissistic people, you give them love and they start to hate you, basically. You get contempt. And that's how it is. It's because they live in a self-fulfilling prophecy where they expect you to leave them, hate them, abandon them, and all that. Very much like a borderline person, right? And so, but this is unconscious. They don't know this. But they automatically start to hate you because you gave them love. If you're my age, you remember that Johnny Depp had a girlfriend, Kate Moss. I remember reading a paper in Argentina, and it said Johnny Depp trashed the room, okay, and the room was a mess and all that. Okay, so he says he has never hit a woman, he has never punched a woman, like violence with women, no. But he has this anger management issue where he breaks things and bangs things and all that, but apparently not with women. He has issues. He's addicted to drugs. He has addictions. It's trauma. One more thing, the Stockholm Syndrome that I saw through his speech, right? He said that he didn't want to get her into trouble, so that's why he lied about the finger. Apparently she threw a bottle of vodka, I think, and then hit him, and then he had to go to surgery. At that moment he was working, and then everybody asked him what happened, and then he said, no, nothing, my finger got caught in the accordion door, and then they say, why didn't you say it? Because he was protecting her. Stockholm Syndrome, that could be, right? Traumatic bond. Victims of abuse usually defend their abuser. And then one other point that I want to make is gaslighting. So at some point he says they ask him, why did you start recording her? And then he says, because I was so confused. And this is a classic with victims of narcissistic abuse. They start recording because they are confused, because of all the gaslighting, right? Where they make you believe you're crazy. He couldn't even believe himself thinking, right? Plus the addiction to drugs and alcohol, that doesn't help. But typically a victim of narcissistic abuse will at some point need to verify what they're going through, and so they can record their partners or family members and then show this to friends and people that they trust, so that, or maybe even themselves, and see, okay, this happened, this is what she said, right? So that's the consequence of gaslighting, because when you listen to the tapes and all that, it's crazy making. It's crazy making. And then he says, and then you notice people looking at you differently. This is another thing victims of narcissistic abuse go through. They don't know that the partner is saying to all their friends lies and lies and lies, selling lies. And so one day they go out innocent, they don't have a clue. And then people look at them differently, like you're a monster. And that's what happens. You feel as if you're the worst thing on earth, because people are reflecting back to you what the narcissistic person said to them, which is a lie. But nobody believes that. It's crazy. So this is another thing that sounds to me like narcissistic abuse. Although I'm not saying he's a saint, of course. He told his story. Of course, this is repetition compulsion. This is trauma. This is the flight response to stress, right? And so it makes sense, right? And then he said, she accused me of doing what she was doing to me. That's the thing. That's projection. We know about this. When they project what they do onto you, and then they say you are doing that to them, gaslighting, crazy making. And projection, that's exactly the word we need, projection. And then her declaration, the position, her body language, my God, right? It's incoherent, it's not consistent with what she's saying, so that doesn't help her. She eats a lot during a declaration and looks with contempt to the person that asks questions, and that doesn't help her. That's what I mean. And then he says one thing that's very common in narcissistic abuse. He says, when you give your intimate truth to the person you are with in a relationship, and then they use that information against you and stretch it out, it hurts a lot. And that's what they do. You open up, you say, you tell them your vulnerabilities, and then they use that against you. And then they talked about a prenup, and then she didn't want a prenup, so he sent her to his lawyers, and then she came back saying that the lawyers were super rude, that didn't treat her well, didn't have a clue that she was lying. So he called his lawyers and bought the lie that she said. That's another thing that happens in narcissistic abuse. You can become a flying monkey, right? As well. Also, he says at the beginning, it was too good to be true. Idealization stage. She was the best, right? And too good to be true. She was gorgeous. She was super warm. Every day he would come back home from work, and then she would, serve him a drink and, take his boots. And then he was like super happy. And then one day he came home, she wasn't there, and he did it for himself. And then she got super mad because she didn't do that for him, and then that's weird. And also, but he explains too good to be true, idealization, love bombing, right? I thought this would be helpful for victims of narcissistic abuse too, since this is a case that is public and it's airing everywhere. I thought, that we could analyze this, and I wanted to share with you what I'm thinking. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you liked the video. Please give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.